Hello and welcome to this webinar, Build Your Workforce Without Hiring. My name is Ketan Mistry. I'm one of the IRIS specialists here, and it's my role to help educate clients on how to use our services and what exactly we do. Now, this webinar will be fairly short. I expect no longer than about 15 to 20 minutes maximum, and there will be time for a little bit of Q&A at the end. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the challenges of running a smaller practice, and sometimes that will obviously have an impact on you as a business owner. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Then we'll look at how IRIS can potentially help and how the actual service works, and then finish with some case studies. So we'll hear from clients that we have using our services who are just like you, who struggled with the same problems, who now have solutions to those problems. So, challenges when running smaller practices. So maybe you're a one-partner firm, or maybe a two-partner firm, a couple of, maybe up to 100 clients, maybe a little bit larger, but there's going to be some challenges which are more specific to you that you face rather than what the larger practices will certainly face. Typically, what we find is the clients can be too demanding and also not collaborate enough. And what we mean by that is if you're requesting information from them, they're not getting that information to you. And obviously that's going to cause a lot of stress, because then you've got the impact of not being able to turn around the work quickly enough. Also, it's the wasted time in chasing them, which is going to cost you money as well. Now, for smaller practices, a lot of clients, I'm sure this will ring true, will tend to be a lot more price sensitive. They are looking for the cheapest service that they can possibly get and not necessarily understanding the value that an accountant can bring. So there's a couple of things that you can do to help here in terms of being able to show how you can provide value, but there's also ways that you can potentially cut costs and help with that. Finding time to grow the business, because you're also busy doing the day-to-day, taking a step back can almost feel like an impossibility. So being able to look at your business as a whole and say, okay, actually we need to spend more time doing X, Y, and Z. If you could find that time, then you know you'd be able to grow the business. It might be finding time to focus on marketing activities. It might be finding time to grow the business. It might be finding time to look at new ways of implementing technology. But with that time, what's the impact of that? Finding the right experienced staff, and it might be the case that you just don't want to deal with hiring staff, and that's what we hear from a lot of clients, is that they don't want to deal with that. But if you are looking to hire, maybe it's a challenge because you can't afford to pay the higher salaries that are demanded in a city. If you're in a city, if you're in a more urban area, a more rural area, it might be the case that you can't actually just find the right experienced staff. And finally, we all know that the government are always, with them going to be changing compliance, and trying to keep ahead of these changes does take a lot of time. So again, it comes back to the theme of time. So what's the impact on you? Well, you're going to be spending too long doing admin work chasing your clients. There's a risk because of the price competition. There's a risk of clients going elsewhere. And what we're finding nowadays is clients do tend to be a lot less loyal than they once were because of the price competition in the market, maybe because of the internet changing the way that it's easy to find information and on firms out there. You might be working weekends to try and just keep up with the work, and what I have heard from a practice is that they purposefully worked weekends because they didn't have clients hassling them over that time. It was a free time that they could actually focus on doing the actual work that they needed to get done. You might be firefighting to avoid fines, so always chasing down clients to get that information to help them to avoid those fines. And generally, again, it comes back to the theme of time. It's just not enough time in the day. Now, if you had the right staff, if you could hire, how would your world look? And again, I'm not saying that necessarily you would want to do this, but if you could hire and get rid of a lot of your problems because the person who's hired is doing a great job, in an ideal world, they would have a high recovery rate. So a lot of their work, their time would be spent doing chargeable work, and you'd have confidence in the work that they're doing, in the quality and the turnaround times. So when they say they're going to get something done, they get that done. It's really important. Sometimes it can be a bit quieter and sometimes it can be a bit busier. So you'd want someone who can be more flexible and work more when required. And finally, they'd be utilizing their skills properly. So if you've hired an accountant, you don't want them doing bookkeeping work. And again, in the smaller practices, there is a bit more of a hands-on approach. So you will be expected to do more than one job. But ideally, if you can focus more on doing the higher value stuff, then you're going to get more out of your business. So if we look at the financial cost of hiring staff, there could be the recruitment cost, which could run around 20%, the actual salary, the employer's national insurance, the holiday, the sick. For smaller practices, office space can be an issue. If you're working from home, if you're a husband and wife team, maybe it's just a bit awkward to have hire someone in and have them working in your space. So again, that's another reason why you don't want to deal with that. Plus the hassle of payroll and automatic enrollment and all of those other challenges that come with that first employee. Typically what we hear is once you've got over that hurdle of 2-3 employees, then it becomes cheaper to get the next person in. So those larger firms benefit from the economies of scale of getting more staff in. However, that first step into getting that additional member of staff can be very, very costly. So that's why potentially people look at services like resourcing. So you have to ask the question, are you too busy to improve? We do have a way of helping, and we have, like as I mentioned before, we've helped many, many clients with this. And it's with using a service called Iris Resourcing, sometimes referred to as outsourcing. Now, we do it all the time in our day-to-day. You know, if you don't want to cook, you can order a takeaway. If you don't want to drive, you can order a taxi. We're just outsourcing that specific function. So it's just means to obtain goods or services by contract from an outside supplier. Now, Iris has many different services we can offer. We have a statutory account service, and that is our most popular service, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how that service actually works a little bit later in the presentation. But basically, all of our accounts are produced in Iris, which means that all of our staff who use it are really, really highly qualified on that. Payroll. We can do the payroll and do the RTI, the auto enrollment as well. So with this, we can also do what's called insourcing. So we can potentially work on your system and work with other softwares in the market. Similarly with personal tax, we can also dial into your system and you can have the equivalent of a virtual employee. For any accounts produced outside of Iris, we can do the IXBRL tagging. And finally, we can do bookkeeping, VAT management accounts. And what's great about that service is we can do it in Xero, Cashflow, Sage. So again, it's not just one software that we work with for bookkeeping. We've got experience in many different softwares in the market. So just to give you a bit more information about how long we've been going. So we've been providing these services for over 13 years. So this isn't a new service. You're not a beta tester in this. It's very much a tried and tested solution. We do have accreditation to make sure that we're handling the data in the correct way, and that's ISO 9001 and 27001 certified in certain processes that we offer. Now, I would ask the question, how many practices can actually say that they've been audited to that standard? As I mentioned earlier, we use industry-relevant software, so depending on the service, we might be able to work with the software you work with. So if it's payroll, we can work with Sage. If it's bookkeeping, we can work with Sage, Xero, QuickBooks, and so on. We have really comprehensive schedules and working papers. We do have a top 4 firm using us down to a husband and wife team, so it's the whole gamut. And what we hear about the type of work that we're producing is it is of the highest quality. Now, I feel it's probably important to get some elephants out in the room. There are some myths about resourcing and outsourcing and some concerns that we typically hear. And I think once you understand a bit more about how the service works, then those fears can be laid to rest. But there's sometimes a fear about lost control, but actually the opposite is true. Because you've got contracts in place, it means that we're committing to deliver within certain timeframes. Also, with Iris Resourcing, you have a portal, so you can see where any job is at any one time. So you've got that visibility. Now, there's sometimes a view it's only about cost cutting, and that isn't necessarily true. Now, there are some benefits, obviously, to cost cutting. You know, if we're producing a set of accounts and it costs us £160, and you're charging out to your client £700 to £1,000, well, and yes, there is a cost cutting element to that. However, that's not the only reason why. It's typically because of the cost of hiring, or it's too much trouble to find the right person to hire. Okay, it's about the flexibility. Maybe you just want half a person, so there's a flexible element to that. So it's not just about cost cutting. As mentioned earlier, there's certainly a myth about resourcing services only being for big business, and for Iris, the opposite is actually true. Most of our clients do sit within the kind of 1-2 partner firms. Like I mentioned earlier, we do have larger practices, but it is husband and wife teams using our services. There's sometimes concerns about the quality that we provide, and with Iris, because there is only one supplier, i.e. you buy our software from us, and if you're buying services from us, it means that it's really important for us that we nail the services side. So there's the phrase that's one throat to choke. You don't have to be speaking to multiple different providers to try and get this arranged. And finally, security. Now, with GDPR being a hot button topic at the moment, of course, security is of the utmost importance to us. So we audit. We're audited in the way that we carry out certain processes, but we also have secure portals where you'll be uploading information to work in that way. Okay, so security is really important to us, and actually the data never leaves the UK because the team are dialing into the portal. So why use Iris Resourcing? As I mentioned earlier, if you're a smaller practice working from home, it could be a space issue. It might not be cost effective to move from your home base to an office space where the costs will go up exponentially within a very short period of time, and then if you're hiring and all of the other costs associated with that. Remove the low margin work. Again, you can outsource some of the lower margin stuff for us so that you can focus on the bits that are important to your business. Save time. Again, the time theme is massive throughout this. When you're sending work to us and we're working on it, you can be focused on something else, and that could be more client-facing work. It could be more higher value work. It could just be implementing new technology. But the point being you would have more time because we're doing a certain portion of the work for you. You'd never have to potentially turn away business. And again, growing a business can be a huge challenge. And if you are at that stage where you're finding you're getting more clients in and you want to service those clients, well, this can be a great solution. And finally, save on the recruitment costs. Again, making that step up can be massively costly, so you can avoid those recruitment costs. So how does it actually work? On a technical level, you would be, as a practice, be arranging the data, getting it all together and providing it for us to then process. And we would sit there once we've received that and process the data, and finally we'd give that back to you to review. So we only do the processing part of the puzzle. So remember, we're backing up your practice and would never contact your clients. So going into a bit more detail, we do have a secure portal where you can attach files. And with that, you can upload all of the work. And what you're going to be uploading, if you're doing a statutory accounts job, is, for example, a cover sheet. You'd be uploading the IRIS backup. You'd be uploading last year's working papers. You'd let us know exactly what the bookkeeping password is, or if it's a manual job, scanning across that data. We are, as I mentioned earlier, ISO 9001 and 27001 certified. And what you're going to get back in 10 to 15 working days is the accounts back to draft stage. Okay, on average, we'd say it's around 9 hours for us to produce the working papers and statutory accounts. Now, if you would sign up to a service like this, we actually bill in a flat rate per month, which can help with the budgeting. So, for example, if you signed up for 25 hours a month, it could be the equivalent of roughly sort of 2 to 4 jobs, depending on how big the jobs are. If you signed up, say, this month, next month you could send 1 job. The month after that, we would actually start the hours, and then the following month is when you'd start getting billed. So there is a lag between when you start using the service and when you actually get billed. Now, when you're uploading a job to us, what you're going to do is say, I think this job is going to take 10 hours, for example, at which point we'll then agree that. And what that means is you've got that time locked in, which means you know exactly how much that's going to cost you to do that work. Okay. In terms of costings, you're looking at around, for a 10-hour job, £160. So, you know, that would be a set of accounts which you're producing for a client, which you might bill out at above £700, £750. We're charging for that part around £160. Okay. So I just wanted to finish with a case study. There's 2 here that I can draw upon, but if you go to our website, there's lots more. There's a sole trader who we went to see earlier this year, Peter Smith. He's established in 2005. He does work from home. He's got 80 clients, mainly smaller businesses and contractors. But he said, it's been great. It allows me to free up my time to focus on client-facing activities. Morrison and Wilson, a practice based up in Glasgow. They're slightly bigger. They have 6 staff, but they mentioned the quality is excellent, and it's at least as good as we would produce in-house. So, you know, we have been helping many clients with these challenges, and the challenges, as I mentioned earlier, are based around time, based around the challenges of your clients demanding too much, the price implications in the market. So I'd like to finish up there. So in summary, we've discussed the challenges of running a practice, the impact that has on you and the impact on your time. If you're working weekends, it means that, you know, you can't spend time with your family. There was a practice a husband and wife team who managed to go on holiday as a result of this, because they could send us the work, go away, and they knew in the background that there was stuff being completed. how Iris can help with Iris resourcing and how it actually works. So we've gone into the technical bit, and then finally finish with a case study. So next steps, I'd recommend that you speak to your account manager. This does require a conversation if you do want to proceed with something like this. And we can take it from there. So again, thank you for your time. We can finish with a bit of Q&A if anybody has any questions. So we've just had a question in here. How many clients do we have actually using the service? We have over 500 clients using the service. And there's a second part to that question, which is how long have you been doing it? It's 13 years. There's a question about quality and how we assure that the quality is high. There's a couple ways that we do this. We have surveys which go out. As I mentioned earlier as well, it's really important to us that we have a high quality. So we're always checking in to make sure that you're happy with the quality. Typically, our retention rate is above 95% on a year-on-year basis. Okay. Lovely. So I don't think there's any further questions at the moment. Again, if you do have any further questions, feel free to get in contact with your account manager. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to speaking with you.